Good morning, everyone. We are looking at, so included in this is the standards meeting summary from, was it July? Wow.
Yeah, it was July, believe it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about anything from the July stuff? And if not, we'll move on here.
We,
And thanks.
we do
Go
need to
ahead.
vote on that,
Yeah.
Carolyn.
I
I'll
can
make a motion to approve.
and I can second that motion. This is Jane.
Thanks, Jane. And who was the first one?
Kathy.
Kathy, yeah.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Phil. Okay, so and let's do we want to start with the P&P working group update, or do we want to go in order?
Before you do that, we have a motion and a second, but we also need to take a vote on it
Oh yeah.
on the meeting summary.
Yeah. All in favor say aye or
Yeah,
aye.
yeah.
Aye.
Any nays? Perfect.
So thank you very much. I think we were in the middle of asking me about the next agenda item, which is the working group activity, and Jamie has agreed to come and join the group at least for the first part of the meeting to provide that update. I know several of you are also participants in that, so feel free to add in the description. And this is really intended just as an informational item. So, Jamie?
All right. Thanks for inviting me in today. I did send out a large group email. So I'm hoping that everyone got that. The files were large and I had to resend it. I had to take something out of there, which was just in relation to some legislation that passed a long time ago. So everybody has kind of they should have gotten the kind of review for chapters 1 through 6 and my notes with that. And then along with that, I sent supplemental documentation. One was an email from Phil. There was some other legislative work that had been done when the policies and procedures were written as well. So the group is still working really hard. Today we have a meeting at 2 p.m. We're starting chapter 7. So we're down to the last few chapters here. I would be happy to take any comments or questions as you guys read through the notes and share those with the group. And once we get this working group wrapped up, the ESS coordinating committee will try and give some direction to the standards committee to start kind of working through that as well. Does anybody have any questions right now for me? That's what I've got. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
If I may, I'll just add one thing before we move on, and that is that the normal process would be, for any idea that was advanced by a member of the 2080 agreement, or really any county, was that if there was a policy commentary or an idea, that's something that we would bring back to this subcommittee. So I think what you should expect generally is if the working group finishes their work by the end of the year, and Jamie and other parties to that discussion kind of end up preparing some type of a summary of all the things that they talk about and any recommendations that they have, then kind of envisioning that kind of document being prepared, then that would be advanced to the subcommittee for further review and discussion. I'm sure Jamie's intent would be to broadly share it as well, but just in terms of process, that's I think what you can expect to happen. So, um, and I would consider that to be standard operating procedure. So, um, anyway, just so everybody knows, and that there is a plan to, take that information and feed it into the normal process.
Yes, and I would add that we are reviewing chapter 7 this afternoon, so that's where we're at in the process.
Okay, thank you, Carolyn. So now we're ready to move on, Carolyn.
Okay, so basically we're going to discuss today ESS and ILR's establishment and communication requirements necessary to operate the statewide land record system, and discuss the standards and expectations from locally to statewide databases, and try to achieve some additional consistency and searchability for stakeholders other than recorders.
If you'll permit me, I'm just going to make a few introductory comments, just as an explanation. So, the substance of this is kind of involves two different but related issues. One is, what is our communication protocol? How are we going to handle those situations where support is needed, particularly, if there's a variance for a service provider who may not be a party to the maintenance agreement, or looking ahead to the future, the possibility that some counties may not be a part of the 28-year agreement. And I also need to preface it by saying this is a planning discussion. We aren't asking for action today. We understand that, it doesn't make sense to adopt a policy for something that hasn't happened yet. So we want to make sure that there's a thorough opportunity to talk about all of the related issues, before any of those decisions have to be made. And that's why we're doing it this way, because this is what we do. We try to look ahead and anticipate what might happen. This seems real enough that it's okay. It's not just speculation. There's a bill that has passed the House of Representatives. So you think about, okay, what would we do about it? How would we handle ourselves? And we already have a situation where one of the service providers is not party to the maintenance agreement. So these are relevant things to talk about. But it's different than the separate issue. It's related, but the issue of the city-town name is sort of, it's related. It's an example. So we've tried to organize this so that, we can really just talk primarily about process. And then when we're done with that, we then can talk about, the specific issue about the data element relating to city and town. That I think it's possible to separate those two things. The memo that was drafted on October 13th, which is in pages 7 and 8 and 9 of your packet, I think are fairly self-explanatory, and it's not my intention to repeat all of that. I'm going to assume that you've had a chance to review that. And really, the only other thing I wanted to begin with is just a quick review of the contents of your packet, because these are just supporting materials, informational items that provide some context for the discussion. So I'm just going to run through those real quick in summary fashion, and then maybe we can turn to committee discussion about your perspectives and observations. So on page 10 of your packet, this is a screenshot of the technical specifications for the county upload API, separate from the e-submission API, and it is published. So you have the opportunity to to go and take a look at that, drill down into it, click through, see some of the other supporting documents related to that. But it all boils down to how is data organized, and what are we asking the service providers to do to prepare to implement this new county upload API. I would say, as an aside, that yesterday we had a quarterly meeting and update with the local service providers. It's an opportunity for us to give them some updated information about things that might affect them. And we did talk a lot about data elements with that group yesterday, just so they had a better understanding of the structure of the data. And we did get some favorable comments afterwards from some of the service providers who said they appreciated having the information, because if you look at the entire API, it's very broad, it's very daunting, and we don't ask everybody to do everything. What we're trying to do is focus in on things that have traditionally been done over the last 20 years, and then to make sure everybody understands the structure of it, so they know how to map the information into the right data field. And so I think that was pretty well received and very helpful to the service providers that participate. Not every service provider was able to attend yesterday. That's why we record those meetings, and then we'll provide them with a link to the copy of the recording, so they can kind of hear it on their own schedule. Then the next part, these are excerpts from the standard agreement that we have with the local service providers. And this is a representative sample. It's actually from the contract that we have with Solutions, Harris Communications. The version was, the main master agreement was last updated and adopted in 2019, which is hard for me to realize, wow, it's been that long since we did it. We've done just a few amendments to it since then, but nothing terribly substantive. But a relevant section that I've highlighted relates to definitions of complete documents or fully indexed recorded documents, which I cover in the memo, so I won't repeat it here. And then a very, very important part of the contract that we have with the local service providers is Exhibit A and B, where we actually describe what are the business functions that are necessary to be fulfilled. And then there is also an Exhibit B, which I'll scroll ahead to, which really begins to address some of those technical requirements. And you can see here that, this is where we publish the link to the APIs so that they can access the information that they need to do their integration work. We've done an Exhibit A and Exhibit B like this for many years. This is not anything new. What has happened, though, over time is that as we gain more experience or as new issues arise, we have elaborated further in these two exhibits to make sure that the service providers really understand what is expected of them. We really haven't had a lot of pushback. Most of this is fairly straightforward. They have understood what the expectations were. I think as a group as a whole, the service providers have done a pretty good job, and they have provided support, good support for both our land records as well as the counties that they serve. So generally speaking, we would characterize, or I would characterize, this as sort of a successful framework for communication and getting things done. So one of the questions that we're asking is, okay, if somebody for whatever reason chooses not to be a part of the support agreement, then how are we going to communicate this to them? And the idea that's advanced in the memo is that we might publish a separate document that is not a part of a contract. And somewhere along the way, I've seen in the email threads that there's a question about, well, what is this thing that's going to be published? And to me, it's been obvious, but I need to state it plainly, and that is really the idea is to take these exhibits and just reformat them into sort of a different type of document, but the content would be the same. And so the idea would be, okay, if you don't have a contract, we still have a document that you can look at as a service provider and say, okay, this is what is expected, and it's a basis for the communication. So it's not something that has been hidden or hasn't been written yet. It basically is Exhibit A and Exhibit B, coupled with some of the definitions that are in the master agreements. There might be a few things added to it, but generally this is really 99% of what the content of that document would be. And so the idea being advanced, which you can discuss, is we'll take this, we'll create a new document, kind of publish it so that it's easily accessible. Even if you don't have a contract, you would, as a service provider, would be able to see these are what the expectations are. And that's really all it is. There's nothing fancy or new about that part of the discussion. It just simply is a way to republish the same information in a different format than what we do today, in the event that somebody's not a part of the maintenance agreement. And that's really all it is. Then to get to page 40 of your packet, this is a draft of what a policy might look like, where we felt the need to say that, hey, these are the standards, these are the expectations, and that if we need to communicate with either a county that's not part of the 28E agreement or a service provider not a part of the maintenance agreement, these are the procedures that we'll follow to do that communication. And I think a very important part of this draft is simply this section, which speaks to the creation of that. And so if you look at the enumerated letters numbers here, those really correspond to the main sections of that Exhibit A and B. It's not exactly letter for letter, but the main topics and issues are just simply summarized here, and it's used as a cross reference. So again, I would repeat that we're having a planning discussion because we got one case that actually exists today and another one that might happen if the legislation passes as it is today, and some counties withdraw from the 28E agreement. And we can come back to this. Then, we do have a specific circumstance where a service provider said, we don't want you to communicate directly with us anymore. We want you to go communicate with the county, which actually is consistent with the structure of the proposed policy. That's kind of what we anticipated. Now, after that communication happens, when there's a need, our team has demonstrated the ability to work with all of the service providers. And at some level, that communication is going to have to happen to solve the issue, whatever it may be, because an API involves communication between two parties. So, we'll be prepared to have that conversation. It's not like we think that we're, dumping the issue off on the county and just saying that, go fix it and let us know when it's done. We understand that once we have direction and everybody knows what they're supposed to do, that our team and the service provider's team, would definitely have to communicate with each other. And the rest of this correspondence is just there to to provide you with information about conversations that have in fact happened and are documented. Um, if you move ahead to page 47 and 48 and 49, this is one of the documents that we have shared with the local service providers. And in fact, this is one of the things we discussed with the service providers in the meeting yesterday. And it's a fairly simple table that shows all of the standard property related, recording related data elements that are part of the Owl Land Record system. And much of it is incorporated in one way or another into our search application. And so, and again, if you kind of look at the entire set of the documentation online for the whole thing, it includes a tremendously larger amount of data elements than what is represented here. What this represents is what we have had counties transmit to us, over the course of the history of the database, which really dates back to just a little bit before 2005. So there are a couple of new ideas here in the list, but we're not requiring them at this point. Because I know that there's been some discussion about should we be indexing some notary information. So what we show on this page is that, well, if the county did do that, what should the county and the service provider do to get at the Owl Land Records? And we do have the answer to that question. It hasn't been activated yet, but it's there. It exists. And so we can tell the service providers and you right now that if you were to start doing that, the data structure has been there. It's been there since the beginning. It's just never been used. So this is an instruction that we would give. Another one that really has not been at the forefront of the ILR database, but it seems to be interesting to some users and constituents is the consideration amounts. And, we really are not using that right now. But if we did, we do have spots in the database, in the data structure for that. And if it's ever decided that that is done, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It was actually also in the original data structure dating back to the beginning. And then just quickly, this kind of relates more to the whole issue of the city-town, and I'll save any discussion for that until later. And I would just say, as I skip ahead, that pretty much covers the main information that relates to the question of, how do we work together? What do we do? I've shared the memo with you, and I don't have much more to add to that. I think this is a time for the subcommittee to have some discussion, and I look forward to your conversation.
Okay, so for discussion, first of all, does anybody have questions about what was just discussed? Or do we want to go page by page? We can kind of start there, I suppose.
The chat pod is open, so which we are monitoring. So if anybody wants to add comments, you can do it there as well.
Well, this is Kathy. I can say on the communication requirements, I do like that the county recorder gets involved in the conversation with both ILR and our local service provider, because I feel like when we switched to Fiddler and we were having a few issues in the beginning with a few documents not showing up in Iowa land records and stuff. And finally, I figured out that I thought it was like the mapping, how we mapped the documents, because when I was given the list to put like how we wanted them to go to Iowa Land Records, I didn't realize let's see, what was it? A deed of trust was not a trustee's deed, and so we had like we had mapped that wrong and stuff. But so I do feel like the recorder getting involved can help sometimes troubleshoot some issues, or then if something comes up in the future, we kind of know maybe what we did or what the problem kind of sort of was. I mean, I don't know anything about the computer coding and APIs, but you know, it kind of helps with troubleshooting.
Thanks, Kathy. And I agree. I think that even though we're not IT whizzes or anything like that, just having information of what's going on is helpful. Even if we have to, if things are not getting done or anything, then we can have those conversations with our service provider if needed, or with ESS and ILR. And I do know that, like, for us now, any fiddler customer in particular, it's going to be that we're notified, and then we reach out to Fiddler, discuss with them, and then Fiddler is going to work on any coding stuff directly then with whomever is necessary. So we're not going to be, it's more of a get us informed and then we'll move on type of thing. But I agree. I think that just being aware of changes is good communication.
So as a Fiddler County, do you, are you for having city and town show up? Is that, I guess since I'm not familiar with Fiddler, I don't know if that's something you're indexing, right?
We are not, and we never have,
Oh,
even when
okay.
we had COT.
I see, okay.
In Cedar Rapids, for instance, like anything that has a plat, it says CR Mount Vernon. We have our own coding shortcuts,
Oh,
which we'll get into for any platted stuff, but we don't
okay.
index, like especially in Lynn County, for instance, the mailing address may not be the same as their city.
Yeah,
So
but
if it says like an addition to Lynn County, if it's not in an incorporated city, that would require us to go physically to maps and look at that and make a determination. And then whether it was annexed into something else or not, we wouldn't know. So I personally, unless it's in a subdivision, do not necessarily want to be responsible for having to figure that data out.
oh, well, yeah, I mean, I think ours only show up if it's an subdivision. You know,
Right.
we have some of those already shortcuts. You can find the different subdivision, and when we create those in indexing, they're just automatically going to either township, Decorah, or Kelmer, whatever. It can be even in a township, rather in the city proper, but that would all show up as far as I know.
Don't some of your legals, like we have legals that are section township range, but they are in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
have that too. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
so I mean, I think a city is important. Plus we have the same exact lot and block number in Fort Madison as we would in West Point. So if somebody was
Sure.
looking for something in West Point, if we don't have the city index, they're going to see the Fort Madison.
Nancy, where do you find the city at? You have to go physically look for it?
It's in the description. It's always in the legal description.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Ours will not say that. Ours will just, even if it's in the city, it may say section 1082.5. And sometimes it'll say in the city of Cedar Rapids, Lynn County, Iowa, or it may say Lynn County. We don't, and if it says Lynn County, it could be in Cedar Rapids, it could be in Bertram, it could be in several different towns.
Yeah, we don't index, I mean, we don't look it up if it doesn't say Fort Madison in the legal, we do not index because
So
we
you
wouldn't look
would-
it up.
So you would leave the city out in that case.
Yeah, because it's not in the legal.
Yeah. Yeah, in our subdivisions, like if it's in any city, it always says in the city of blah, blah, blah. It's just when it's Lynn County that they don't in a subdivision, but
Yeah.
separate of that, even if it's a section, township and range, there's so many little towns in Lynn County that overlap. And what's even more difficult is, like I said, the mailing. If you go look at the assessor's website, that mailing address is not the same as what city they're in always. We have
Yeah.
like Troy Mills and different things that,
We have that too.
and we just
Yeah.
can't rely upon just some of those types of things.
Right. Yeah, we do. We have the same situation.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, because you may live out near Pilot Grove, but your address is Donaldson or West Point, and it's like, what sense does that make? You know?
Right. Okay. So yeah.
But like you, Nancy, we index, if it's there, we index it. If it's not,
Yes,
we don't. Yeah. we don't
exactly.
Worry about it, I guess.
So this is Kathy. So would we switch to Fiddler? At first, well, I mean, we were indexing the cities or municipalities, but I don't know if we realized they weren't going to Iowa Land Records or what. But then we had them switch, so each one of our subdivisions lists the city or township with that subdivision. So our cities are going into Iowa Land Records, but it's as part of the subdivision, the main legal description. It's not going in a separate city category in Iowa Land Records. But so when we index, say it's original town Manson, when we start typing original town, we pick if we want original town Manson, Rockwell City, Lake City, whatever, and we pick the Manson one and then put the lot and block. But anyways, that way our cities are going with our subdivisions to Iowa Land Records. It's just populating in that legal description thing and not as under city.
We're the same way in Lynn County.
Yeah, and I'm making a technical comment here. I'm not making a value judgment here, but where it comes into play with our land records is that if you are a user using the search application, you would have to know that if you cared about the city in those particular counties, that would not be present in the city county field, but you would have to use maybe in combination with a wild card, trying to figure out how do you search based on town using the subdivision field. And generally, I would say, in terms of building a search application, having the relevant data elements parsed, which we do in many other cases, would make it easier for a searcher to use. So I'm stating that as plainly as I can. So there understand the practices, and this is how we do it conversation. But there are when you apply it to the search application, that there are consequences of that, and you have to figure out, okay, what do you do about that? Is that acceptable, or should some adjustment be made? And again, I'm not getting into that specific debate, but part of this is just how do you technically work with something that fits into the data structure that you use that supports your search application. So I appreciate the background. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just like to ask, I saw that Danielle, she's one of the abstractors for Webster County and Calhoun County and stuff on here. Danielle, do you guys ever actually search by just the city? I don't know if she's still on here.
We don't typically search by city because we've already searched our own title plant. So when we come over there, we're just double checking to make sure that we don't see anything by names, essentially.
Okay.
But we do look at the legal when we're there, but typically when we're there, we've fully already searched it. You're kind of our double check. So
Okay.
Okay, perfect. And I think that's most abstractors are looking on a case by case legal basis or name basis when they're updating abstracts. But yeah, I would agree with that. Thanks, Danielle.
No problem.
Okay, now we have a question about, from Patty that says, does the asterisk represent by the county or service provider? Some counties say yes, some say yes with the asterisks, and there's no legend, and that was actually one of my questions too. Phil?
Actually, I'm going to, if Corey, are you on? Can you speak to that? I think I know the answer, but if you're on, can you go ahead and answer? I don't know if she is or not.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay. The asterisk, I believe, indicated partially there were instances where city appeared and instances where it didn't, or perhaps there was non-city data in the city field, but city was there on some occasions, just not 100% of the time in the small sample that we looked at.
right. I would agree with that. That to kind of we did a sample, so we didn't do an exhaustive search, but we're trying to look for what is the pattern, and the pattern showed that even in the small sample that we took, there were variances in how a county did or did not do it. But I don't think we went so deep as to contact the county and say, why do you do it in some cases and not others? We didn't get that deep. Is that fair, Corey?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, this is just discussion today, and I'm assuming then we'll have more discussion and talk to other counties about that. But given today, I would suspect that pretty much most of us, whether we're putting it directly in a city field or not, we go by what the subdivision is, and if it's or if it's present, it's there. They'll put it. They'll index it. Is there
Carolyn-
further discussion on this?
I have a quick question for Fiddler counties. So when you have a new subdivision platting and you create a new subdivision name in your program, how do you create it?
It's in what we call anchor, but it's called municipality
Okay.
or township, municipality or township name. And that's essentially what the city is for us. So whatever subdivision that is in municipality, we put the city name that's on the plat. So it's a matter of schematics, more or less. I would say in our case, that one would equal municipality equals city or township name. But we enter it into a like it's in a data table. We enter it into a data table. And we have to enter that in before we can even that and the subdivision name and any lots, etc., before we can even index it. So we have to make it basically marry it to the system.
So when you create the name, you're putting it in as, Carolyn subdivision space Cedar Rapids.
Yes, we do it word for word off the plat, but yes, and then we'll use so and then we have a conversion that'll say Cedar Rapids equals CR. But yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
And that's the same. It's basically the same way we did it when we had COT. It's just in Fiddler, it's called Anchor. And I can't remember what we called it in COT, but it's pretty much the same data.
So you're kind of telling it what city it's in.
Yes, we do when we get a new subdivision plat. That's exactly right.
You're somewhat mapping it that way.
Yes, and that's exactly how we map it. Or we map it to the township name. So like you could be in Brown Township, that's not in a city, but it's your mailing address, for instance, might be Mount Vernon, but it's a Lisbon address. If it's
Okay.
not incorporated, does that make sense? So we would say Brown Township.
Yeah, we don't work, we don't do anything with the address. So that's where I was confused
Yeah.
as far as when you're talking about mailing address, I guess
We don't either, and that's why. So we either do it to the city or to the township name.
gotcha.
And
Thanks.
Stacy, I had Eagle before, and it's just like putting a new subdivision in Eagle. There's a kind of almost not really a spreadsheet, but a database where you put the subdivision
just
and then
create it.
the city that it's linked with. So
Gotcha. So you are mapping it to the city. I mean, you are telling it where, based on what the subdivision name listed in the subdivision plating, it says what city it's in. So
yes, yeah, it's
you're
just for some reason, Fiddler, the municipality category, is not going to Iowa Land Records, even though most of us aren't indexing it.
gotcha.
And sorry, Stacy, if I confused you, because I think
No.
I did say address instead at one point. I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. Thank you, guys.
So good question. Okay. Anything else? If not, we'll move on to page 40, I believe.
I've got a couple questions before you leave that. Um, uh, the first one is in the context of communication, um, and I'm going to be really careful when I say this because I'm not wanting to get into just an argument with anybody. But the the example that we have in front of us, I'm going to say I'm a little bit unclear about whether the process has really worked the way it should or could. Um, and and so speaking as broadly as I can, if in this particular case, we weren't looking for the issue. The issue came to us because a individual county said, "How come I'm not seeing the city anymore?" And so we tried to work on it the way we've always done it by just going back to the service provider. That was not a successful path, and we were asked to not directly communicate with them anymore. And we said, okay, we will honor that. And so there was communication that went not just to that particular county, but kind of as a test of, how should we handle this? We communicated with the counties that were served by that particular service provider, kind of as a group. And so that message was sent out. And I'm generally aware that there were some discussions that were held, but I'm going to have to say that we really never got any feedback um, about what potential resolution of the issue would be. And by that, I mean, I'm not saying we disagree with feedback. I'm just saying we really didn't get any direction. So our position would be at this stage of the game is we don't know what to do. There's nothing for us to do. We're prepared to work with the counties and the service provider to resolve the issue, but that communication loop has not really been closed yet. And it is true that we did receive one email communication from one county, which is in your packet, but we really didn't get any communication back to say, okay, here's what we think should happen. And whether we agreed or disagreed with whatever that message is, that opportunity for that conversation has not really happened. So, and again, I'm not wanting to get into a discussion about that particular issue, but it is an illustration of what happens if we communicate the issue to a county or group of counties, and um, uh, and we don't necessarily have a single point of contact. We're kind of waiting for somebody to communicate back to us, um, and uh, that really, in my mind, that really hasn't happened yet. So, looking at it going forward, what should we be doing, or what expectations should we have for for uh, uh, that communication? Because right now we're just the issue still exists. I've I've heard your explanations today about why it may not be possible, at least right now, in certain counties because of the way they index. But I also know that there are a number of counties that were indexing city and town, that were transferring the data point to our land records, and now they are not. So we don't really know why. We don't know whether they're still indexing it in their new system or not separately. And we don't know what the real cause of the issue is about. If they're trying to send it the data to us, why it's not working, because we really haven't received any feedback. And I'm just looking again, trying to look at this going ahead. What what should we say in a policy or in some other method to say kind of what our expectations should be for for kind of trying to close up the communication loop. And I hope I didn't offend anybody with that, but that's kind of a real thing, about trying to be in a position to close the communication loop and you know decide, okay, what do we do next? Should we just close the issue right now and say it's irresolvable, and then we communicate to people that in these particular counties they no longer index it and we no longer receive it, just so that they are not frustrated by any attempted search, or what course of action should be taken. And not only in this instance, but if something similar happened in the future, how should that be handled? I'd be interested in your guidance on that.
Well, I think that it should be a case by case, and in this point, we're not abstractors, and even if we're putting the city in, obviously it's not 100%, and abstractors are going to need to be checking that. We're not, that's not something that we should ever be liable for. So if they're using that solely for abstracting, I guess I know that our abstractors don't, but they look at everything like Danielle stated. So I guess I'm not sure that it's in this situation it should be an issue.
Yeah, and I noticed Polk County doesn't index the cities. It showed on your little chart. So I guess my thing is, I mean, it's not just us Fiddler counties that it's not going to Iowa Land Records that Polk doesn't. Like, I don't know. Have we ever heard any other searchers that that's an issue, that they're searching by city and it's only by city and it's not there? I mean, I don't know how big of an issue is it for searchers.
I know of the one specific case that precipitated the question. So there's at least one out there, that had not an abstractor who was attempting to search by city, and they had previously been able to do that before the change in the service provider happened.
Right, but they weren't all in there. When I went back and looked, all of that stuff wasn't in there. And my guess is it would be a yes with an asterisk beforehand. So I don't know if that person was even aware that they maybe weren't always getting all the data. it's probably most likely, I don't know for sure without asking Denise, but it'd be off of subdivision data. And that's
Yes.
another question. I don't know if you're getting the municipality field or not, if from Fiddler, but if you are, that would be synonymous with a city field, at least in Lynn County. And we didn't before. If it was there, it was there. And if not, we would have been a yes with an asterisk, I guess, in the way this was done. But we didn't do it separately. It came from the subdivision field. And then my guess is then the code was written out from subdivision if in equals whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I understand what you're saying. And again, making no judgments here, but I do think from a database perspective and from a search engine perspective, that it is a better practice to separate data elements so that they can be used for searching. And we've had city town as a search element in the search application since the beginning of time. So this is not a change in policy, and we really have not had a practice of saying that that idea of separation of data elements shouldn't matter in one case and not another. So I don't recall us having a discussion to say that you know if there are not enough searchers who use that, then we should discontinue it like that. Or if you happen to believe that you know that somebody shouldn't be allowed to do a market share report, which I don't know what the purpose or use of it was going to be, but if you're going to have it in your search application, maybe you should try to make it useful and workable. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to serve a particular interest. It's just a better practice, to separate your data elements. It just is. Any database administrator would tell you that. So, maybe the answer is we're not going to get an answer, and maybe the answer is that the service provider is not going to make a change to fix that in those counties who do index the name, and maybe that's something that we just have to accept. But I think that communication needs to be there to say, okay, I mean, and you guys are the standard subcommittee. What does it mean to have a standard? Right now, we have a standard that has a separate field for city town.
I mean, it's never been in the past used by everybody.
No, that's not true. Most of the counties do index city town.
But some don't and never have, and it's not just one service provider. We didn't, and Polk still doesn't.
I would say in this particular case that if you've never had that practice, I understand that point of view. I understand, I think, maybe why you did it historically. And maybe that can't be changed. But if there are counties that have been indexing it, I do not understand why it is not possible to make an adjustment so that data element can continue to be indexed and transmitted to our records. I do not understand that. And I don't understand it because nobody's explained it to me yet. So to me, the communication is not complete, even though the people in this conversation today, may not think it's important. I believe we should try to help every user, especially, if it's something that we do in most cases already. So, and the point of this this part of the discussion is in this policy that I have up on screen, which is still draft. Um, uh, you know, does this adequately describe, the process that we that we should follow, or if it doesn't, then what changes or adjustments uh, should be um, should should be uh, made? Because I would say that even though um, some have never done it, um, and maybe it's not possible to change that, the scope and specifications have not changed. Even though they're not a part of the maintenance agreement anymore, they are what they are. They are essentially what they've been since the beginning in 2005. And is there not a reasonable expectation that service provider comply with that, or that a
This,
county comply with it,
yeah.
especially if they can?
This is
You may
Kathy.
not be able to.
I will reach out to Fiddler in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know when I'll be. Hopefully by the end of next week I'll be back to work, but I'll reach out to Fiddler to see like how easy, what kind of a change would have to be made for the city municipality to go to Iowa Land Records. And then I even at one of our next recorder meetings, because I'm on the uh certification committee and stuff, but I would even like to have a discussion about just document recording standards, like a kind of open discussion for recorders on issues, because I know there's a lot of us indexing things differently. What we accept for documents, if there's whiteout on it, some people charge the non-standard, some people don't, and all that kind of stuff. So I would actually like to maybe at one of our next recorder meetings that be like a discussion, some of those kind of things to get everybody's opinion on it.
I agree. I think that like another thing that you have on here is the sale price of a deed. Well, the sale price is only on the DOV. Not everything requires a DOV, so we're not always going to know what the sale price is. And we have the revenue doc sticker on there with the conversion.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
that's another
Understood. And that's precisely why that data element isn't used currently, right?
right.
So,
I saw that you had it in red, and I just wanted to make sure that we had that discussion.
right. Are there any, based on what you see in front of you in terms of this, I think this is the third time around for this draft as far as meetings. What are there any comments specifically about the draft policy? Um, uh, well, again, it's not a decision-making day, uh, but we would appreciate your feedback. Um, and please know that, where we come from as a staff, as a team, trying to implement the system is the objective of we do have a charge because, we didn't adapt the policy. The ESS committee did, to say we want to have a system. I think there's generally support for the idea of trying to make it work as best as you can, to make the search as useful as we can. And that's what we're trying to do. And so this is a question that doesn't have any other agenda than trying to make the system better than it is today, or as good as it can be. And so and then we do look ahead to, there are changes ahead. One way or another, there are changes ahead. And so we want to be in a position to be prepared for those and to be able to, respond in an appropriate way. So if you don't have any specific comments today, I would continue to invite you to say, if not this, what? And we'll continue the discussion. Obviously, I wouldn't anticipate any action on this until, at the earliest, probably July, because we'll know what the outcome of the legislation is at that time. The July meeting would be the month before the August quarterly ESS meeting. So there might be enough information available at that time to begin to make some decisions. But again, we're looking to plan ahead here, trying to make sure that what we're doing is open and correct. And so my opinion, Carolyn, is that even though I tried to separate it, you should have talked about both issues at the same time. And I don't have any further information specifically on city and town other than what we've already talked about. And Kathy, I appreciate your willingness to maybe follow up and sort of fill in the blank on that communication. And the only thing I really have left for you today is just a quick update on PRIA. It's not even on the agenda. I just wanted to share knowledge with you about that. So if you have other things that you want to talk about in the meantime, before I get to that, I hand it back to Carolyn. I'll jump in again and just say, if you go to page 61, it relates to the discussion of the role of PRIA in advocacy. And historically, we've taken the position, this is not new. I actually served on the study committee.
Could we hold on a second? Did the recording stop at some point?
It started again, Carolyn. I think it was accidentally stopped.
That what?
It was accidentally stopped. I don't know why, but it restarted again.
It was brief.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I think Kristen will stitch them together after the fact to make sure we don't lose that.
Yes, thank you for checking.
What I'm reporting here is that, I served as a member of the committee on PRIA that did the last major edit to the PRIA bylaws and the operating rules for PRIA. And as I try to point out here, there was a lot of discussion about how far PRIA should go in, being an advocate for legislation and so on. And the current president of PRIA is sort of advancing an idea that maybe PRIA should be doing more in that vein. And, our position is that PRIA really needs to be a neutral ground for both the industry as well as for recorders, and that we think that they should continue to be that. So nothing more than just giving you this background, providing you with some of the source documents so you can read it for yourself, and to let you know that conversation has advanced. I have been invited to participate in the next update or review of the pre-operating rules. So apparently I'm so welcome, and we'll keep you up to date as any changes that are had. So nothing bad. It's just sort of a philosophical discussion, and it's gonna be taking place over the next several months. So we'll see what happens. But other than that, I am finished and don't have anything further for you today.
All right, thank you, Phil. Should we go back to chapter 2, page 40, I think?
Could you repeat that, please?
Should we go back to page 40 at chapter 2 and kind of,
Uh,
do we want to go over all that?
I had asked if there were any further comments or edits, and nobody had any. So I'm happy to discuss that further if you have comments.
I thought you were just giving your summary. My apologies.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, I guess, does anybody have anything in 2.1 to discuss? Or
Cover it up.
anybody in 2.2 to discuss? The question that I have is, the first sentence about ESS is required, changing from implement to facilitate.
I that's a that's a suggested edit to the current version of the policy. Look at it this way: the current law is very clear. It requires every county to participate and everybody to follow the policies and procedures established by ESS. As written today, House File 1031 eliminates that. It changes sort of the tone. And I think, in view of what that is, what is in the bill, it kind of changes the role of ESS and ILR to more of a facilitator rather than a director. And that's really the intent behind that suggested change. But if there's a better way to say it, I certainly would be open.
Okay, and so we don't have a crystal ball, so I guess we'll leave it for now. Aaron had asked, can we send these proposed changes to the working group for the PMP and 28E and have them review this prior to implementing any changes?
I can partially answer that and say that this was provided to Jamie and the working group when they reviewed the current version of Chapter 2. And what was reported back to me is that they felt like they weren't ready to do that because the law hadn't changed yet. But if Jamie and the working group, they do have this already, so this is not new to them. But if they wanted to circle back and discuss it further, that would be fine. No problem there. They already have it.
And I would concur that we do. And some of this, I think maybe the bigger question it would be is, as we're going through, whether it's standards changes, definitions, or whatever, I guess some of these would be is if the House File 1031 passes, some of it language is needed and is relevant regardless of a bill passing, and those that are contingent upon the bill, will we be waiting to update those things until we see, I guess, what happens?
That's totally up to you. And most of the feedback I've received so far is the bill hasn't passed yet, so why are we doing this? So, and all we are trying to do is let's look ahead. don't wait till the last minute to have this conversation.
Right, so we have it ready to go is kind of
Yep.
the idea.
Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up for people, so. All right. Let's go to section 2.3. My only question was, and I didn't get time, it was gonna be for myself, but maybe Phil, you know. A through O, are all of these in the PREA list? Do you know?
You mean the table that I provided to you?
No, like, K, unique document code values and those, like, those
Oh,
types.
yeah. Well, I mean that is the way it's done. So the associated documents are tied to uh, that that unique code value that are assigned by the county and whoever the local service provider is. Um, and I don't know that there's any proposal to change that. But you know, if that's just an item that the service provider wanted to discuss, we certainly would.
I don't think that I mean, it was just more of a question, like, does some of this type of stuff, because we looked to PREA for a lot of things, does like that one come from PREA to begin with? Was more, it's just a general question, not that I'm
Yeah,
wanting to change anything, but
yeah. I would say, um, you know, I would I would certainly say that if we were starting all over again, I would make changes in our data schema and our structure, um, just because we have 20 years of experience under our belt. But on the other hand, you know, a lot of people's time and energy have been invested in the structure that we use from Korea, and it does work. Um, we're basically changing the platform for the API from an XML based platform to a JSON based platform, and the other uh, uh, change is from a SOAP version of an API to a REST, what's referred to as a REST version of the API. And the best way I can describe that, because I'm not a developer, is that, you know, standards change, technical standards change. Things that were done before are no longer supported by the industry. They aren't being updated. So if you want to remain current and also secure, you have to make those changes to the newer versions. And that's why the switch to the REST API and JSON. That's the whole purpose behind it. The, the data structure itself is essentially the same as it's always been. It's just in a different form.
okay, nope, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And let's see here. Anybody have any other questions out there before we move on to either Peter or Phil's letter?
I don't, maybe you stepped out for just a second, but I, after nobody gave any comments about the draft of the policy, we kind of moved through that and went to the PREA letter, and I gave a description of that, and there weren't any questions. And, you know, I don't have anything further to discuss in the agenda today.
Right. Um, so I have a question still though, about the notary data. I can see it both ways being visible to the public, but then at the same time, if I was a notary, I'm not sure that I would want all that stuff to be public data just from the purpose that somebody might use it. I guess they could use it to steal anyway, I suppose, regardless of whether it was being searchable or not.
Yeah, I would say the conversation about how to use the information hasn't advanced that far. Um, Most of our conversation about the notary information was, at a minimum, it would be in the database behind the scenes, and if there was ever any research that needed to be done, about a particular notary and their activities, that data would be helpful to them. I'm not sure we really talked about it in terms of, are we going to display it on the website? Um, and I think that is a conversation that should be had if we ever get to that point. But for right now, there's no plan to post it on the website.
Okay, that helps. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. All right then.
Carolyn, were
Mhm.
you concerned about your personal information being on for a note as a notary?
And just maybe mine, but not in particular. I just kind of have,
Because you can search it on the Secretary of Secretary of State's website.
yes,
So
and
it's out
whatnot.
there.
And if you come here, it's already searchable because it's public record. I have two schools of thought on that. Like, I don't want to make the commission number, all these things, these data points even more easily available for people to quote unquote steal and use,
Okay.
I
get
guess.
it. Sure. Okay.
That's the devil's advocate in me, I guess. That's why I'm asking that question. But on the other hand, it is already public. I just don't know, do we want to make it, would it make it any easier, I guess, if we did?
Sure.
I don't know the
Okay.
answer to that. Just food for thought.
Okay.
So, because in my thought, if I was going to do something wrong, I'd go search notaries, and if somebody does 1,000 notaries a week, I might want to steal from them versus somebody who only does 2 a year.
Yeah. Good point. Mhm.
I mean, unfortunately, people do bad things. If nobody did anything bad, we wouldn't worry about it.
That's true.
I would share with you that, if you look at the entire schema, there are other data elements that you could index that kind of exist in the overall structure. And what we've tried to do here in this illustration is show the ones that maybe we would be interested in indexing, just because it kind of ties it to what you would typically see on a notary stamp, right?
Right.
What do you see? The number, the expiration date, what state they were commissioned in, and the name of the person. We wanted to limit it to that because, that's already in the document. I mean, the document image. So, and I don't think for the purposes that we talked about, you need any more information than just these 4 data points. And again,
Yeah,
this
I
is
would.
all a discussion at this point, nothing required.
Okay. No, but I would definitely concur. I'm just. Okay, I do not have anything else. Anybody have anything else to discuss today? If not, I would make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
And
second.
we'll first discuss the next meeting, I suppose. Sorry.
Oh,
Thank you, everyone. I wish you a happy Halloween and happy holidays.
Oh,
Because,
Stacy just said, what about committee nominations? I know
oh yeah,
District 1 was supposed to have a meeting 2 weeks ago, but then it got canceled. So I don't know, maybe if I'll talk to Renee if we can even try to have a Zoom get together or something if we can't meet in person. I'm willing for District 1 to stay on the standards unless someone else in District 1 wants to do it. But yeah, we'll meet sometime to discuss that.
please communicate with Ann Ditchworth on that because she is handling the appointments.
Okay.
And do we want to set a next meeting?
I am uncertain about what the environment's going to be like. So at this point in time, I would recommend that we hold off on that for a little bit, and then we can communicate by email with the members of the subcommittee, maybe in November or December when we maybe have a better fix on a few things. So I have not prepared any recommendations yet. Typically speaking, if you kind of look at what we've tried to do, the ESS committee usually meets in February, May, August, and November. And what we try to do is have standard subcommittee meetings in the month before that, so that there's some time to prepare any policy or whatever that needs to be advanced to the full ESS committee. And then typically you have been meeting somewhere in the third week or so of that month, which often is a Thursday. So, if you had to make a prediction about what the calendar would look like, I would use that monthly time frame, of January, April, July, and October, third week. Try to keep that in your minds. If we follow the pattern, that's what it would be.
All right, Phil, thank you for everything and all the information.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for the good conversation today. Really, really appreciate it. Appreciate the comments from some of our guests and also those in the chat pod. Again, happy holidays, whatever you
All
celebrate.
right. So make a motion to adjourn.
This is Kathy. I'll second it.
Perfect. We are adjourned. Have a good day, everyone.
You
All
too.
right.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.